The silence was the first thing I noticed. It was louder than any music could have been. It filled the small, beautiful chapel, bouncing off the polished wood of the empty pews and the stained glass windows. My wedding dress, a simple A-line I had saved for a year to buy, felt heavy on my shoulders, like a costume for a play where the rest of the cast had failed to show up. My name is Lauren Mitchell, and I was 29 years old. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a perfect Saturday in June, the day I was supposed to marry the love of my life, Ethan Parker. But as I sat on a small chair in a side room, clutching a bouquet of wilting peonies, I knew something was terribly wrong. Not a single member of my family was there. Not my mother, not my aunts or uncles, not my cousins, not even my father, Robert Mitchell. The man who had held my hand just last week looked me in the eye and promised, "I'll be there, kiddo." I wouldn't miss it for the world. He was supposed to walk me down the aisle. Instead, he had vanished. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. I didn't want to look. I knew what I would see. But I did it anyway. It was a picture posted by my cousin. There they all were, my entire family, gathered on a sunny patio, smiling and laughing. My mother, Margaret, was holding a pastel-colored gift. My father was raising a glass and a toast. And in the center of it all, glowing under a banner that read, "It's a boy," that was my sister Emily. They were at her baby shower. My wedding day was just another Saturday to them. Another day to celebrate her. To understand how a family could do that, you have to understand my sister, Emily. She was born 2 years before me, and from her first breath, she was the sun our family orbited around. I was just a shadow she cast. Our mother, Margaret, was the architect of this universe. In her eyes, Emily was a star, destined for greatness. Emily had the right hair, the right smile, the right effortless grace that made people want to please her. I was quieter, more serious. I liked books and drawing. Mom called it being in my own world. She didn't mean it as a compliment. I remember our birthdays. For Emily's 10th, my parents rented a pony. For my 12th, I got a gift card to a bookstore and was told we'd celebrate with a cake sometime next week. We never did. When Emily made the cheerleading squad, my mother framed her uniform and hung it in the living room. When I won the state-level art competition, she taped the certificate to the refrigerator, where it was soon covered by grocery lists and takeout menus. It wasn't that they were cruel in a loud, obvious way. It was a quiet, constant dismissal. I was the afterthought, the one who was expected to be low maintenance, the one who didn't require the same investment of time or emotion. Emily's life was the family project. She married Christopher Hale, a man whose family acted like they were old-money aristocrats. The truth was, they were drowning in debt, using a fancy last name to hide the fact that their grand house was mortgaged to the hilt. But appearances were everything to my mother. Emily had married well. She was building the perfect life. The family's pride, their hopes, their entire social identity was invested in the perfect image of Emily Mitchell Hale. I didn't fit into that image. I was a detail that was always slightly out of focus. Then I met Ethan. He wasn't what my family had planned for me, which, of course, was nothing at all. Ethan Parker was a comic artist. He was kind and quiet, a dreamer who saw stories in everything. He saw the world in lines and colors I couldn't. And more importantly, he saw me. He listened when I talked. He looked at my sketches and didn't just say, "That's nice." He'd say, "I love the way you drew the light here. It feels hopeful." For the first time, I felt seen. When I brought him home for dinner, it was a disaster. My mother looked at his gentle smile and worn-in jeans with pure disdain. Over salad, she asked him about his work. He explained his dream of creating a graphic novel. "So, it's a hobby," Margaret said. Not as a question, but as a judgment. "That's sweet. But what do you do for a living? For a real job?" "That is my real job," Ethan said calmly. "I do freelance commissions, and the book is my main project." My mother just smiled that tight, polite smile. "Well, I'm sure Lauren will need a provider, not just a hobbyist." The word hung in the air. Provider. It was a code word for not good enough. My father, Robert, just sat there swirling the wine in his glass, avoiding everyone's eyes. Later, when we were alone, I confronted him. "Dad, why didn't you say anything? You know how much his art means to him." "To me?" He sighed. That familiar, tired sigh of a man who hated conflict. "Lauren, you know how your mother gets. Let's just keep the peace. Ethan seems like a nice guy. She'll come around." But she never did. And my father's idea of keeping the peace was to always bend toward my mother and Emily, toward their comfort, their needs. My comfort was negotiable. When Ethan and I got engaged 6 months later, the reaction was lukewarm. Emily was the one who delivered the final, calculated blow. We had set our wedding date a year in advance, June 14th. We sent out save the dates. The whole family knew. 3 months before the wedding, Emily announced she was pregnant. We were happy for her, genuinely. But then came the announcement for her baby shower. It was a big, catered event at her and Christopher's house. The date she chose? June 14th. When I called her, my voice shaking, she was so casual. "Oh my God, Lauren, was that your wedding day?" "I'm so sorry." With the baby brain and all the planning, it totally slipped my mind. It's the only weekend the Hales could do. You understand, it wasn't a coincidence. It was a power move. She was reminding me of my place. She was the main event. I was the conflict in her schedule. The texts started coming in at 10 in the morning on my wedding day. I was in the hotel suite with my 2 best friends, getting my hair done. The first one was from my aunt. "So sorry, sweetie, can't make it. Got cornered by Christopher's parents, you know how they are. Have a beautiful day." I stared at the screen. An hour later, another one, from my uncle, running late from Emily's thing. "Don't wait for us to start." Then came the one from my mother. My hands were trembling as I read it. "Lauren, I'm so sorry, but I can't leave. Emily needs me. She's feeling very overwhelmed with all the guests. She's the priority today. I'll call you tomorrow. She's the priority today." She wrote it down. A truth I had known my whole life, now spelled out in cold blue text. My best friend took the phone from my hand. "Don't look at it anymore, Lauren," she said, her voice soft. But I was waiting for one more. The one that mattered most. The one from my dad. For hours, his name didn't appear on my screen. I held onto a tiny, stupid piece of hope. I thought, he'll be different. He promised. At 2:30, with the ceremony scheduled for 4, his message finally came. It wasn't a call. It was a text. "Things are very celebratory here, so sorry. It's hard to get away. Emily's moment is very important to us. We'll make it up to you. Love, Dad." That was it. My heart didn't break. It felt like it just stopped. Every word was a small, sharp dagger. Celebratory here. Hard to get away. Emily's moment. He wasn't just absent. He was choosing to be absent. He was choosing her joy over mine. Each text message wasn't just an excuse. It was a confirmation of what I had always suspected. I was not a daughter to them in the same way Emily was. I was a supporting character. And today, I had been written out of the script entirely. At 3:50, 10 minutes before the ceremony was supposed to begin, I was hiding. I had left my friends in the main room and slipped into a small empty office near the chapel. I was in my dress. My makeup was perfect. But I was folded into a chair, trying to breathe without letting out the sob that was clawing at my throat. I didn't want Ethan to see me like this. I didn't want his memory of his wedding day to be of his bride crying alone in a back room because her family decided she wasn't worth their time. The door creaked open. I expected it to be one of my friends, but it was Mr. Adams, our landlord. He was a man in his late 70s, a retired diplomat who lived in the apartment above ours. He was always impeccably dressed, kind, and reserved. We had invited him out of courtesy, never imagining he would come. He stood in the doorway holding his hat in his hands. He took in the scene, me, alone, in my wedding dress, with tears threatening to ruin my mascara. He didn't ask what was wrong. He already knew. He had seen the empty family pews. He walked over slowly and stood in front of me. His eyes were full of a gentle, profound sadness, not of pity. "Miss Mitchell," he said, his voice quiet but clear. "I believe a bride needs an escort." I looked up at him, confused. He offered me his arm. "It would be my great honor," he said with a simple, unwavering grace, "to walk you down the aisle." A tear finally escaped and slid down my cheek. Here was a man I barely knew, a practical stranger, offering me the dignity and respect my own father had denied me. I took a shaky breath, nodded, and placed my hand on his arm. It was firm and steady. When the music started, I expected to feel a wave of despair. I expected to look at the empty rows where my family should have been and feel the sting of their rejection all over again. But as Mr. Adams walked me slowly and proudly down the aisle, something else happened. I saw Ethan waiting for me at the altar. His eyes were locked on mine, and in them I saw no pity. I saw love. A love so strong and so real that it made everything else fade into the background. I looked past him, at the faces in the crowd. Ethan's parents were beaming, his mother wiping a tear from her eye. Our friends were all there, their faces filled with warmth and support. The small chapel wasn't empty at all. It was overflowing with genuine affection, with people who had chosen to be there, with people who saw us, who valued us. In that moment, a profound realization washed over me. The love in that room was richer, deeper, and more real than anything the 40 absent members of my family could have ever offered. Their presence would have been an obligation, a performance. This was real. This was chosen family. I walked down that aisle with my head held high, not in despair, but with a strange and sudden sense of clarity. When Mr. Adams placed my hand in Ethan's, he squeezed it gently. I squeezed back. My vows to Ethan were not just words. They were a declaration. I was choosing him, choosing this life, choosing this love. And in doing so, I was choosing myself. The ceremony was filled with laughter and happy tears. It was perfect. Not despite my family's absence, but maybe, in a way, because of it. There was nothing fake in that room. There was only joy. During the small reception in the garden behind the chapel, Mr. Adams approached Ethan and me. He was holding 2 glasses of champagne. "To a future filled with happiness and art," he said, raising his glass. We toasted. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a simple, elegant envelope. "I hope you don't find this presumptuous," he said quietly. "But a young couple deserves a proper honeymoon, and a talented artist deserves to see the world that is worthy of his craft." He handed the envelope to Ethan. Inside was a letter. Ethan read it, his eyes widening in disbelief. He handed it to me. The letter was from a man named Jonathan Pierce, a well-known philanthropist. It turned out he was a lifelong friend of Mr. Adams. It also turned out that, a few years ago, Mr. Pierce had anonymously commissioned a piece of art from an up-and-coming online artist he admired. That artist was Ethan. The letter was an invitation. Mr. Pierce was offering us the use of his private yacht, currently docked in the Mediterranean for 2 weeks. All expenses paid. It was not a gift of charity. The letter made that clear. It was a gift of respect from one art lover to an artist whose work he deeply valued. I looked at Mr. Adams, speechless. He simply smiled. "I made a call," he said. Jonathan was delighted. "He said the world needs more beauty and your husband creates it. Go, enjoy the piece. You've earned it." I couldn't believe it. The man my mother had dismissed as a hobbyist had just been honored in a way my family, with their obsession with money and status, could never comprehend. His talent, his soul, had earned us this incredible gift. We flew to Italy 2 days later. The yacht was beautiful, a sleek vessel named the Serenity. For the first week, we sailed along the coast, stopping at small, quiet villages. We swam in water so clear it felt like glass. We ate fresh pasta on the deck and watched the sun set over the ocean. It was paradise. It was peaceful. For the first time in a long time, I didn't think about my family at all. On the 7th day, I took a single photo. It was of Ethan's hand holding mine. In the background was the deep blue of the sea and the endless sky. It was a simple, happy picture. I posted it on my social media, something I rarely did. I didn't tag anyone or mention the yacht. I just wrote a simple caption, "The adventure begins." I put my phone down and went for a swim with Ethan. When I came back an hour later, the screen was lit up like a Christmas tree. I had 47 missed calls. From my mother, my father, Emily, my aunts, my cousins. As I watched, another call came in from my mother. Then another from Emily. Texts poured in, a frantic flood of question marks. "Where are you? Whose boat is that? Lauren, call me now." Over the next few hours, the number of missed calls climbed into the hundreds. The peace was shattered. Their silence had been broken, not by an apology, but by a frantic, demanding curiosity. For 3 days, I ignored the calls. I let them go to voicemail. I let the texts pile up, unread. Ethan told me I didn't have to answer, that we could throw the phone into the ocean. But I knew I had to. Not for them, but for me. This was a conversation I needed to finish. On the 10th day of our honeymoon, as we were docked in a quiet cove, I saw my mother's name flash on the screen again. I took a deep breath and answered. I put the phone on speaker so Ethan could hear. "Lauren? Lauren, finally. Where are you? What is going on?" Her voice was frantic, high-pitched with a mix of anger and panic. "I'm on my honeymoon, Mom," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "Your honeymoon? On a yacht? Don't be ridiculous. Where did that yacht come from? Whose money is paying for this? Did that boy of yours get you into some kind of trouble?" In the background, I could hear Emily's voice, sharp and screeching. "Ask her who she's with, Mom. Ask her who she's using." The jealousy was so raw it was almost pathetic. I waited for them to finish. The sea breeze was warm on my skin. Ethan sketched in his notebook beside me, a quiet, solid presence. "It's a gift," I said, my voice steady. "A gift? From who?" my mother demanded. "Nobody gives a gift like that for no reason. How much did it cost?" And that was it. That was the core of it all. For them, everything had a price tag. Value was measured in dollars, not in worth. "You're asking the wrong question, Mom," I said calmly. "You're asking about money. This wasn't about money. It was about respect. Ethan's talent earned us this. A respected man who loves art gave this to us because he values what Ethan does. It's a kind of value you've never understood, something you never once saw in me or in him." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear their minds trying to process it. The narrative they had built for me, the quiet, unsuccessful daughter with the hobbyist husband, had just crumbled. They couldn't compute a world where my life, our life, could be blessed with something they couldn't buy or control. We never spoke about it again. The calls eventually slowed, then stopped. They were left reeling, trapped in their world of appearances and judgment, unable to understand how the daughter they had written off could be cherished in ways they couldn't imagine. Their power over me had always been my need for their validation, my hope that one day they would finally see me. On the last day of our trip, I sat on the deck, sipping champagne. Ethan was beside me, sketching a pod of dolphins that were leaping through the waves. My phone was on the table, silent. I picked it up, looked at the long list of missed calls from my family, and I pressed the power button. The screen went black. A feeling of profound peace settled over me. They thought that by leaving me alone at the altar, they were diminishing me, showing me how small my world was without them. They had no idea. By abandoning me, they had unknowingly and finally set me free. If you've ever been underestimated, like this video and subscribe. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from.